Good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all to the committee's open briefing on the Addendum to the Guiding Principles on Foreign Terrorist Fighters, recently adopted. I wish to congratulate all members of the committee for successfully concluding the review of the Madrid Guiding Principles and to thank CTED for the support. Were, as you know, difficult negotiations, but very successful. The Madrid Guiding Principles and the Addendum reflect good practices and creative approaches developed by member states and United Nations entities, international and regional organizations, civil society, academia, and the private sector. The objective of our discussion this morning is to build on the achievement of the 2015 Madrid Guiding Principles and the recent adoption of the 2018 Addendum. It is also important to assess means for its implementation. While several of the world's deadliest terrorist organizations, including ISIL, have been weakened and the number of FTFs returning and relocating is lower than expected, the threat they pose can at any time be exacerbated by a number of persistent factors. Returning and relocating FTFs could express the threat of terrorism to new territories and increase conflicts. The release of convicted FTFs from prison may also continue to present long-term challenges. Family members accompanied or associated with FTF, including women and children, may also require long-term rehabilitation and reintegrating assistance. Although member states have made progress in addressing these challenges, many of the conditions that were conducive to the emergence of the FTF phenomenon remain in place. In both developed and developing countries, significant numbers of young people have traveled to areas where their personal security is at risk. Terrorist organizations have also abducted vulnerable individuals, including refugees, ethnic minorities, and women and children, and used them for the purpose of extreme violence and sexual exploitation. For instance, Al-Shabaab has publicly called upon parents to send their unmarried daughters to fight alongside male militants. ISIL has used children as young as 9 years as combatants, suicide bombers, human shields, and the like. They have also raped thousands of women and girls as young as 12 years old, especially members of the Yazidi minority group. In 2015, 1/5 of Boko Haram's suicide attacks were carried out by children, of whom 75% were girls. Boys abducted and recruited into Boko Haram's ranks are reportedly forced to attack their own families to demonstrate their loyalty. These are just a few examples of the enormous human suffering that this phenomenon continues to cause in many parts of the world. So we must remain vigilant in our efforts to combat it. Continued implementation of the Madrid Guiding Principles and the Addendum could play a significant role in addressing these threats. Today's discussion provides a timely opportunity to identify ways to make further progress. Thank you very much. I would now invite Assistant Secretary General Michèle Coninsx, Executive Director of the Counter-Terrorism Committee, Executive Director, to deliver his opening remarks. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank you all for joining us here today. And as you all are aware, the Security Council considers the phenomenon of foreign terrorist fighters returning or relocating from conflict zones to be a matter of priority. And of course, it also remains very high on our agenda at CTED. It's an issue that touches upon a wide range of policy concerns, including identifying and addressing the reasons why individuals travel to conflict zones to join terrorist groups, the development of criminal justice responses to returnees and relocators, and the rehabilitation and reintegration of convicted individuals, both inside prisons as they serve their sentences and outside upon their release. Member States and the international community have made considerable progress in their efforts to counter the evolving threat of terrorism, including the many new challenges posed by the return and the relocation of foreign terrorist fighters from the conflict zones of the Middle East. Over recent years, the Security Council has adopted many resolutions on terrorism, thereby introducing a broad range of new requirements for member states in a number of areas. In 2015, the CTC held a special meeting in Madrid with member states, international and regional organizations, members of the civil society, academia, and the private sector to identify ways to address the FTF phenomenon. The special meeting resulted in the committee's adoption of the Madrid Guiding Principles on stemming the flow of foreign terrorist fighters. 35 practical tools for addressing the FTF phenomenon in an effective manner in full compliance with international law. Member states should be really congratulated for their progress in meeting the requirements of the relevant Council resolutions and the Madrid Guiding Principles. But there are many challenges ahead. Terrorists and terrorist organizations continue to react to the new measures introduced and to adopt their methods accordingly. We have seen a marked trend towards attacks that may be carried out by only one or few individuals using small arms and light weapons or even legal and readily available equipment. And we have also seen all too many, in lots of occasions, that such attacks can be extremely difficult to detect and prevent and can have devastating consequences. And yes, we also now face the real challenge of dealing with FTFs returning to their countries of origin or nationality or relocating to third countries or have remained in the conflict zones. Detecting, identifying, assessing, investigating, prosecuting known or suspected terrorists has always presented significant challenges for the member states. And new methods developed by terrorists to avoid detection and conceal evidence can further frustrate their efforts. Nevertheless, those challenges have in many cases been overcome through the use of recently developed tools and strategies. And over the past few years, remarkable progress has been made in collecting, using, and sharing biometric data, digital evidence, financial intelligence, and intelligence collected through special investigation techniques. The use of such tools and strategies can significantly increase the chances that terrorist attacks are prevented and that the perpetrators are brought to justice. However, this technological progress has outpaced the progress made in developing the appropriate laws, policies, and institutions required to ensure that those new tools are used effectively, appropriately, and responsibly. Further efforts are therefore needed to ensure that all such approaches are used in a manner consistent with international human rights and the rule of law. Efforts to criminalize FTFs-related crimes and to identify, investigate, and prosecute the perpetrators have in some cases brought higher rates of convictions. However, the anticipated release of many individuals convicted of terrorist crimes will present a further set of challenges. We have seen an unprecedented rise in the number of family members who have been brought to or born in the conflict zones. We've also become increasingly aware of the many different roles played by women in terrorist organizations and of the many ways in which children have been exploited. It has been estimated that only 5% of the women who traveled to the conflict zones of Iraq and Syria have returned. Women represent only 4% of all recorded returnees. These statistics suggest an urgent need for closer analysis of the reasons why women are not returning, why to facilitate their return in a human rights compliant manner, and the fate of those who have returned. Children impacted by terrorism may require significant, tailored, and long-term protection rehabilitation and reintegration. And such children may be orphaned, separated, or abandoned. They may also have serious medical and psychological issues, a limited or no formal indication, and they may also face stigmatization and rejection. Since the adoption of the Madrid Guiding Principles, CTED has continued to support the Counter-Terrorism Committee in its efforts to assess member states' main gaps and challenges, collect good practices and creative approaches for overcoming those gaps and challenges, and identify and analyze new and emerging trends and developments that could impact those efforts moving forward. Many good practices have thereby been identified, and towards the end of last year, as been well explained by the chair, the committee adopted a set of 17 additional guiding principles to guide the states in their efforts to implement the obligations set forth in all relevant Counter-Terrorism Security Council resolutions. Those principles were discussed at a fourth special meeting of the committee here in New York on the 13th of December. The guiding principles and the addendum contain detailed and very specific guidance for ensuring that the relevant tools and strategies are deployed and implemented in a manner that is compliant with domestic law and international obligations, and also ensure full respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. They also contain guidance for ensuring that those tools and strategies are age and gender sensitive. Today we will explore some of the guiding principles that may present particular challenges and opportunities for member states, and they concern different areas, different types of evidence. They concern also addressing terrorist radicalization and recruitment through risk assessment, intervention programs and prison programs, the preventing and combating the illicit trafficking of arms and light weapons, ensuring appropriate responses in cases involving children, including in the context of border control, information sharings, and so forth and so on. Moving forward, further efforts will be needed to assist member states to implement the Madrid Guiding Principles. It's good to have the principles, but it's equally important to create awareness of those principles, to make sure that they are implemented wherever and whenever possible, that we introduce this in our visits in the countries to be visited from this year onwards, and that we make sure that we don't miss any opportunity to make of this a fight an effective and an efficient fight. I would like to end by commending the hard work done within CTED by the branch, led by the chief of branch, but also by other teams and sections in CTED. That work was being finalized under the auspices by the chair of the CTC. That's the start of the work, much more to come, awareness and implementation. Thank you very much.
I thank ASG Coninsx for her remarks and overview.